Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to this class on Genesis. We're going to begin with the third chapter of Unit 3 now. Uh, this again, we're going to do this is basically about the last part of Jacob's life, and from here we are going to move into Joseph and his life. So let me share the screen with you all, and let's see what's there in this chapter. Okay, so now here we see this is the chapter 12, and this is called Jacob's family in Canaan. So there's a map on the front page itself, as you can see, and it specifically tells us the places, points towards the places that the different incidences took place in. So where we see that Joseph was sold in such a place, brief residence. That means they stayed there for a short period of time. Then rape massacre that took place, the vision of the ladder, the reconsecration, the death of Rachel, and the death of Isaac. So all these places are there marked over here for your convenience. And then we see the covenant with Laban, struggle with the angel, meeting with Esau, welcomed by the angel. So we see all these things happening in this place. Okay, so now let's move ahead and see what is there in this chapter. So we've already seen that there was a confrontation between Laban and Jacob, which could have been full of bloodshed, but because of God's intervention, it was resolved very peacefully. So Jacob's time on the wheel, basically, as we can see on the wheel of the potter or in God's hand, was almost over, and he had matured enough in his character and was rebuilt by God. He heard personally from God, and he received confirmation of the covenant and was assured of his presence in exile. Okay, so now in Genesis 32 to 38, there is a new transition taking place in his life, which is geographically, biographically, spiritually, and nationally. So geographically, Jacob returns from Padan Aram to Canaan and with his whole family. Biographically, we see that the emphasis shifts gradually from him to his sons, especially on Joseph, who would take the center stage in the rest of the chapters of the book of Genesis. Spiritually, Jacob will soon encounter an angel of the Lord before he reconciles with his brother. An increasing danger of moral corruption is seen in Jacob's sons, and the daughters mix with the Canaanites. Okay, so this kind of corruption would be to take place, can be seen in this portion also. And nationally, we see there is a transition that takes place. Nationally, we see there is a transition that takes place, that we see Esau becoming a nation while Israel is in danger of being absorbed by the intermarriages with the Canaanites. So take uh, God prepares to take them to Egypt, and the first step to this migration was to take Joseph there and place him in a high position to prepare a way for the others. So we see that nationally, God is going to make Israel a big nation gradually, but first Esau is going to become a nation of Edom, and gradually we see that Israel will be absorbed by the Canaanites in the intermarriages. So God prepare. It would have become like that. So God actually makes a plan that to prevent the Israelites from being absorbed in the marriages by marriages in with the Canaanites. He basically deviates the whole process, and he takes them into Egypt, which is the 400 for the 400 years, as we see in the book of Exodus. So we see that before this migration takes place, the first step of this migration was to take Joseph over there and to place him in a high position, so that he would prepare a way and a place for others to stay there. So through this is strange. This plan is very strange, and when it was happening, nobody understood and nobody could fathom what was happening. And people would definitely think that the pain Joseph went through without any reason. Okay, but it is plan of God, and everything works out to be good because it is the plan of God. So every struggle that Joseph went through was actually to bring the whole of Israelites into Egypt, and not let them be absorbed in the immoral and idolatrous environment of Canaan. Okay, that's how God wanted to protect them from the Canaanites. So He brought them into Egypt, where Joseph would be there, and he would, make a place for them, and they would stay there for 400 years, and they would be a huge nation, and then Moses would take over. So not that God. uh, we see that not that God originates rivalry and strife, but he can turn around the acts of the evil man and use them to carry out his own good purpose. So Romans 8:28, in all things, God works for those who love him. Okay, so we see these things happening, that everything that was happening now and is going to happen, God is going to do something good, and everything is going to end in a good way. So in this lesson we are going to actually talk about the crisis and the changes that take place in Jacob's life, and then we will see from Shechem to Bethel, his journey, and we'll also see Jacob's sorrow. Okay, so the first part we'll look into crisis and changes. So Jacob's life seems to have been filled with crisis. God intervenes to protect him. Basically, the reason why so many ups and downs were there in Jacob's life was because of few reasons. The reason was his self-dependence, his dependence on his own intelligence. His name itself was quite problematic. It was heel grabber or supplanter, and it reflected his real character, his selfishness, and his selfishness actually invited all kinds of troubles towards him. So the first thing in this we can see is the change of circumstance. The four things we are going to see in this. The four things will be the change in circumstances, the change in the weapon, the change in the name, and the change in the enemy. Okay, so first thing that you're going to see now is the change in the circumstances. So as Jacob and his company neared the borders of the promised land, that is Canaan, a band of angels met them. Okay, so they were confronted, or they were met with a band of angels. So seeing them, he was assured. So when Jacob saw these bands of angels, he was assured that Jehovah's protection was upon them. Okay, and that Jehovah's protection was upon them in the upcoming dreaded encounter. Okay, so we know that Jacob was going to encounter with his brother. He was going to meet Esau, and he knew that Esau was terribly angry with him. He was furious with him, and he was assured that because Esau had even taken a vow that he's going to kill his brother. So Jacob was very scared of that thing, and we see that as now he's approaching Canaan, he was very scared of that. And now at this moment when he sees that the angels have come to meet him, he felt more secure and more assured that the protection of the angels or the protection of God was upon him, and he will be able to face this circumstance that is before him. So this place is called Mahanaim, or the two armies. Okay, where the two armies were there at the same place. So Jacob probably needed more spiritual equipping before he entered the land of Canaan, or his inheritance. So, though he spent 20 long years in the school of discipline, still he relied on his craftiness and strength to get what he wanted. So, though much change had taken place in him, but still we see that he still dependent upon himself, and that he was still crafty as his basic nature was. And he, by hook or by crook, he did what he wanted to do. He wanted something, he would get it by hook or crook. That was his game. Okay, so that he was still like that. So his self-reliance needed to be broken, and dependence of God had to be installed in him. So he had to drain himself off, or remove that self-dependence from himself. And he had to become dependent on God. That's what God wanted to change in him towards the end. Now that's what basically God wanted to change in him throughout the 20 years, but still that thing was remaining. Okay, so a new nature was needed to be received by him to receive the full blessings of God. And we see God's hand in all of this. The threat of death in approach to Esau and his army. So he was he was threatened, okay, that Esau and his army are approaching him, and Jacob struggled with the angel. So these both incidences actually would work to make him and change him and mold him and create a new nature in him. So this produced changes in his circumstances, weapons, character, and enemies. So till now, Jacob counted largely upon his own shrewdness, strength, but now he feels that his life is mortal danger. So he thought, now it's done, now I cannot do anything, there is no one I can trust, there is no human being around me who can help me, I cannot help myself and my life is in danger. So he knew that none of the devices can help him. So the tactful message, he strategizes things. He is We have to understand that it's not easy for a person who has been depending upon himself and his shrewdness for years to just give up all those things and trust upon God. Okay, so this is what is happening with Jacob right now. So now, because the things are out of his control, now he's not able to do anything, and he's so fearful at this time. He still keeps his calm. He still keeps his senses, and his conscience is still alive. And he, tries to handle it very tactfully. So he sends a very tactful message to Esau, and he says Jacob presents himself as an inferior to Esau. Sorry. So we see that Jacob is actually presenting himself as an inferior person to Esau. We have to remember that Jacob had already stolen the birthright and did everything before that. So, but now because he is afraid, so he feels that I should show myself as vulnerable so that my brother may forgive me. Okay, so we see that what he does is he shows himself inferior to Esau and hopes for his approval. But Esau does not respond. But he does. But Esau actually does not respond to. Esau does not respond. But Esau does not respond to any of these things that Jacob sent his servants with. Okay, so what happens next then? Jacob comes to know from his servants that Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men, a band of 400 men. Now what? Now Jacob thinks that I'm gone. Everything is over, finished. Probably Esau was determined to avenge the wrong Jacob did to him 21 years ago. Esau has not forgotten anything, and he was alive just to avenge the wrong that he was done to. So we see Jacob, fearfully and distressed, strategizes his moves. He divides his camp into two parts, or two companies, so that if Esau gets to attack one part, the other part may escape. So that's how he plans. So in his critical hour, Jacob turns to God. Now he has no other support, nothing to go to. So he goes to God. Okay, he goes to God. Supplanter goes to God. A person who strategizes, a person who is so dependent upon himself, and a person who is like so full of himself. Now this man goes to God because he has no other hope or no other place to go to, and he intercedes as never before. He prays and he intercedes for help as never before. So what happens next? We see that he pleads with God for his of his fathers. He pleads with God of his fathers on the grounds that God commanded him. So he's reminding God, okay, God commanded that you commanded him, me, to return to the land. It is not I who wanted to come to the land, but it is you who commanded me to come to the land of my own relatives, and you promised that you will prosper me. That's what Jacob is telling God. The first thing that Jacob tells God, that it is you who actually commanded me to come back to this land, and you said that you will prosper me. That is, you told me to do it. Then Jacob fully recognizes his own unworthiness, and he confesses that only God's grace and goodness have changed the possessionless shepherd into the owner of two good companies. Okay, so we see now that Jacob also confesses of his unworthiness, and says that it is only because of God, because he came empty-handed and he had nothing when he came to Laban's home, but it was God who had actually made him into such a big person and such a rich person, such a prosperous person, and he has such a such big two camps with him, two companies with him. Okay, now it is just because of God, and he accepts that, and he confirms that, and he confesses that. uh, Yet he does not, something he does not do. Okay, he has confessed that everything has come from God. He has said that it is God who commanded him to do this. But the main thing that he should have done, he is not doing. He has still not confessed the sins of his past. He has still not confessed the wrongs that he have done. He does not realize that it is not Esau. Okay, he does not realize that it is his real enemy is not Esau. His real enemy is he himself. Jacob himself is his biggest enemy. He does not realize that. So his scheming, selfishness, and deceit made it necessary for him to leave Canaan. Okay, because he was so vicious, because he was so schemeful, because he was so selfish and deceitful that he could not live in Canaan anymore with his brother, because it would have just destroyed everything. So God took him through a school. He must be humbled. Okay, he must be humbled, and he should think about others. He should be generous, and he should establish good relations with his brother before reaching the promised land. And that's what God wants him to do. Jacob now frankly confesses his fears. Okay, Jacob tells God that he is fearful, and he asks God for help. He quotes his promise. Okay, he quotes God, that God promised him protection, that he would bring him back safely. He promises, and then sets out to do whatever can appease his brother. Okay, so all this is the prayer that he does to God. First he, first he tells God that you commanded me to do this. Then he recognizes the and is grateful to God for whatever God has done for him. Then he, then he then he also basically confesses that he is fearful of what is happening now. All these things is going on. He has not even confessed his sins till now. So we see that after doing all this, he again gets back to his plans and again strategizes something. He selects, what does he do now? He thinks he should appease his brother. Okay, it's not now he's not thinking, now also he's not thinking that he should please God, but he's still thinking that he should please his brother. Okay, so what does he do? He selects a most generous present of goats, camels, donkeys, and cattle, around 580 in all. He acts shrewdly once again in accordance of the proverb. A gift opens the way of the giver and ushers him into the presence of the great. Okay, that is mentioned in Proverbs 18:16. So Jacob is in this great crisis, cannot flee because of his slow moving family and flock. So he could not just run away from Esau because his family was there, flocks are there, and everybody is moving slow. He couldn't run away. So only God could help him in all these things. He could bring him out. So God does help him. We see that God does help him. He leads him to renounce all he had done in his youth. So God is taking him towards confession gradually. God will take him towards confession. He takes him towards confession, corners him. Okay, God corners him. He struggled and cheated to gain superiority over his brother, his birthright, the special blessing, and God's promise that Esau would serve him. But now Jacob sends gifts to Esau, as a servant does to his master, to appease him as a token of submission. That is very strange. Okay, so he sends gifts through his servants, who were to say to Esau, your servant Jacob sends gifts to my lord Esau. That's what they are to say to Esau. Then Jacob meets Esau, bows before him 7 times. How God had changed his circumstances and his character to reconcile with them. It is utterly amazing. Next, we see his weapons were changed. Now, what weapons are we talking about? You will get to see very soon. As they reach Jabbok River, he stays back alone and he's praying. Okay, suddenly he is praying too much. Okay, suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder, and a stranger begins to wrestle with him. The struggle continues all through the night, and in the end, he touches one of and in the end we see that the stranger touches the stranger, which is the most mysterious person we see in this place, the mysterious opponent. He touches him, and he is crippled, and he makes him helpless. Okay, so one touch of this stranger, one touch of this mysterious opponent, it makes him crippled, it makes him helpless. But Jacob, recognizing the supernatural power and the nature of this stranger, he does not leave his character. He clings to him tightly. He clings to him tightly the way he clung to Esau when he was coming out of the womb. He was clinging to him tightly, and he weeps in desperation and in pain. Okay? The angel asks him, "Let me go." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." What is the significance of this struggle until daybreak? So the whole night they were struggling. Jacob was struggling. This angel and Jacob, they were fighting, wrestling. And in the daybreak, we see this angel is about to leave, and this Jacob holds to him and does not allow him to go. So God's purpose in striving with Jacob is actually to bless him. God did not want to give him pain and just leave him like that. God's purpose was to bless Jacob. He always has fought to get blessings. Okay, so Jacob till now has always fought, always done all wicked things, has always fought to get blessings at the cost of others. Now, in his helplessness, he suddenly sees how useless his efforts have been and how powerful this opponent has been. God did not want to crush him, that he could have done in an instant, but he wanted to conquer him by getting him to surrender to his will. God teaches him the weakness of human strength and the sufficient insufficiency of human wisdom in order to give him divine strength and wisdom. At this point, Jacob gives up his natural weapons of human cleverness and self sufficiency for the spiritual weapons. Godly, we see that here we'll see the weapons that what God wants actually Jacob to have instead of the weapons that he's actually having. So at such a point, we see that God gives up his, that Jacob gives up this struggle. After this struggle, we see that Jacob gives up his natural weapons of human cleverness, like he gives up his human cleverness and his self-sufficiency, and he takes on the spiritual weapons like godly desire, prayer, submission to God, and dependence on God. Hosea says of Jacob, he struggled with God, with the angel, and overcame him. He wept and begged for his favor. Jacob's struggle seems to imply strength. His weeping and the begging the angel's favor seems to imply weakness in the worldly terms. But in the spiritual realm, we see they are just the opposite. Jacob prevails by grasping the hand and that he has broken him, that has broken him. So we see that the hands that have broken him, Jacob is grasping to that hand and prevails on it. And we see by prevailing on it, he is receiving the power from this divine being who is his best friend. So this God whom he understands that this is the Lord who is fighting with him, and this is the Lord who has actually twisted his waist, and now he is limping. And this person who has actually broken him, Jacob, is holding on to that person who has actually broken him, and through him he is getting this divine power, and this is his best friend. He conquers by yielding. When he yielded to God, he actually conquered. Till now he thought he is winning, but he was actually losing. But the moment he gave up, the moment he yielded to the power of the supernatural, he actually conquered. He finds divine strength when he discovered his utter weakness. So it's in confession that you receive power. In confession of your weakness is when you receive power. With this, a new day is dawning on Jacob. So this is a new beginning of Jacob. The next thing that happens to him is a change of name. So when this crippled Jacob cried unto the angel answered him. First, he makes Jacob confess what he is. He asks, "What is your name?" Jacob responds, "Jacob," which means supplanter or heel grabber or grasper. Then the angel replied, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome." This new name indicates a changed spiritual character or a new standing with God. The meaning of Israel differs according to different scholars. Isra is similar to the word for prince, power, and ruler. El means God. So some of the scholars say that it can mean prince of God, power with God, or he will rule as God. On the other side, we see there is other meanings also. So some say that it's prevailed, struggled, persevered. Okay, so according to this, it may mean he struggles with God, soldier of God, contender with God, God strives. We can even add God overcomes or overcomer with God. Okay, so from heel grasper, supplanter, now it is to Israel. He's become Israel, contender with God, overcomer with God, God overcomes, prince with God, power with God. So it's an amazing change that takes place with the name in with the change of the name in Jacob's life. So Jacob's life changes after this point. Though as human he may fall sometimes, but he was completely and deeply devoted to God, and now he claims his new name. This name will be given to his patriarchs, to the patriarchs' descendants, to maintain the nation that comes from them to the 10 northern tribes. First to the 12, and then to the 10 tribes that remain in the northern kingdom. In the New Testament, we see Israel or or the Israel of God in Galatians 6:16 made up of both Jews and the Gentiles, the company of believing men who have been overcome by God and have prevailed with God. Okay, so Israel can mean the patriarch Jacob. Israel can mean the 12 tribes of Israel. Israel can mean the nation. Israel can also mean the 10 northern tribes of the divided kingdom. So the Israel of God today is the church. Though the messenger did not tell his name, Jacob was convinced that he is the Lord. Okay, because of the experience that he had with him, he realized that it has to be God. He names the place Peniel, the face of God, to perpetuate the memory of this decisive turning point experience in his life. Okay, it was strange, it was अद्भुत अगर हम बोल सकते हैं, बहुत ही अद्भुत अनुभव था जिससे याकूब गुजरा था इस समय. So it was a turning point in his life and he never could forget that. So he named it the Peniel, the face of God. His vision of God was probably dim because the messenger left just at the daybreak, and yet he says that he has seen the face of God and lived. So Jacob saw the face of God and he has lived. Israel's limp will always be a reminder of his struggle at Peniel. It symbolizes the breaking of Jacob's nature. The fourth thing that we see the change is the change in the enemy. When Jacob meets Esau after the night's struggle, he was changed man, a completely changed man. Love had replaced the long held hatred and fear, and there was joyful reunion instead. When he saw his brother approaching with 400 men, he led the family as a procession, heading it, and Rachel and Joseph right far at the behind. Till now we had to see that he was actually sending all of them ahead and he was going to come behind to protect himself. Now he is heading the whole group of people. Now he is walking in front and his children are at the back. So all strategies are over. Now he is leading the band. He humbles before Esau and bows 7 times before him. It meant that he was acknowledging his guilt and expressing his desire to be forgiven. As he saw his brother crippled, limping, bowing before him humbly, all the bitterness was forgotten by Esau. Esau was reluctant to receive Jacob's lavish gifts. His reconciliation with his brother is sincere. Besides, he himself is rich and does not need Jacob's herds and flocks now. Jacob insists, and Esau smiled, which seemed to Jacob like that, like the smile of God who met him at Peniel. See, can you imagine this beautiful change that has taken place? Esau is smiling. Jacob is insisting that no, no, please take these gifts, please take these gifts. And Esau just smiles at him, and Jacob sees the smile of God on his face. Is it not such a beautiful sight between both of them? And Esau accepts the gifts as a sign of reconciliation. Esau offers to escort him with his men, but Jacob politely declines the help and says it is unnecessary. He moves ahead to Canaan as God had told him. He did not go to Seir with Esau because God had told him to go back to Canaan. Jacob now has good relations with his brother, but he knew it is good to keep distance. Thus, Esau maintains a beautiful balance between relations and what God tells him to do. Thus, Esau returns to Seir and Jacob to Succoth for some time, where he builds for himself a house and a shelter for his livestock. The next thing that we see is the incident at Shechem. From Shechem to Bethel. Jacob is now in the promised land with his family, and the possessions are very quickly finds the whole family actually gets into trouble very soon. There is a rape and a revenge taking place. He finally leaves Sukkoth and is back in Canaan, but does not go to Bethel. He does not go to Bethel, to his father's house or father's home. He stays in Shechem because of the attraction, because of the attractive green pastures and commerce over there. He purchases a land over there and settles there. Jacob erects an altar in the grateful recognition that God has fulfilled his promise to bring him back to Canaan safely. This time, he dedicates this altar and he calls upon the name of the Lord as El Elohi Israel, God of Israel, as a permanent witness to his household and the Canaanites. Dina, his daughter, over there, she starts moving around and she ventures out and she visits some of the women of the land of the Canaan. She was naive and she did not know of the immoral life of the men of the Canaanites. She did not know that if they see an unmarried girl, a virgin girl, they would pounce upon her. And she did not know that they will misuse her or they will rape her or they will take advantage of her. She was naive, very naive at that time. Shechem, the Hivite prince, saw her and fell in love with her deeply. Instead of marrying her initially, he just takes her to his place and kept her there, and probably slept with her and made love to her or raped her, whatever the scene was. And we see that he promised her again and again by for doing all these things that he is going to marry her. He requests his father to make arrangements for their marriage and talk to Dina's father about their marriage. Jacob, according to the custom, asked the elder brothers to talk things out and probably make arrangement for the marriage. Shechem's father Hamor offered to pay any price they asked as dowry, as he was the ruler, and offered all of them privileges of citizens of the community of trade, intermarriage, and owning property. So he gave full advantage to the family of Dina. He said they will be citizens of the country. They will have all the privilege of community trade, of intermarriages, of anything that they want. Okay, just to marry Dina and Shechem. Then he tried to convince the people of the city also that this marriage is going to bring prosperity to the nation of Shechem because of the wealth that Jacob possesses. So Jacob's sons actually refused to give Dinah to Shechem even for the lavish dowry and citizenship. They were not attracted to all these things. They refused and they were not going to sell their birthright or their covenant because of all these lavish things and all this dowry and money and citizenship. But their deceit, we can see that the deceit that took place over there uh, from the sons of Jacob right now, it was cruel and it was horrible and it was wrong, extremely wrong. So the anger of Simeon and Levi on hearing Shechem's deed that he raped their daughter, their sister Dinah, uh, it was actually against the moral stand. We can see that when they heard this news that Shechem had done wrong with Dinah, it filled them with fury. Okay, so they knew that the moral standards of these Canaanite people were not good, and they knew, especially in the matters of sexual abuse, sexual matters, they were quite immoral, and they were quite immoral actually in comparison to the Israelites or these 12 brothers and all their household. So they became very agitated, they became very furious, but they took a wrong step. Shechem's crime deserved punishment. We believe that Shechem's crime did deserve punishment because he did wrong to Dinah, but the punishment that Simeon and Levi did give to the people or the whole nation of Shechem at that time, it was wrong. It was completely wrong, and they violated the principle of just or equal punishment of the crime. So their murderous vengeance in killing all the men of the city was far more than Shechem's crime. What they did was basically they said, okay, yes, we can marry Dinah and Shechem, but for that, what you to do is you have to circumcise all the men of your group. So all the men have to be circumcised. So the king, or we can say Hamor, what he did was he told all the men to be circumcised. Shechem and everybody was circumcised, and when they were in pain, they actually went ahead and killed and plundered the whole nation or the whole city at that time, which was actually very wrong, just for a rape. Okay, which it is unjustifiable which they did. So their treachery was using the sign. It was treacherous actually, and they use a sign of religion as a deception, and it was absolutely unjustifiable, even in the sight of God. Okay, so Jacob's reproof of Simeon and Levi actually overlooks the moral wrong and the massacre and the plunder that was done by them. He was actually concerned with the danger that the family will be facing because as a result of what they had done. So he did not rebuke them because they had done something wrong, but he was scared that because of this that they have done, the family would suffer. That was what the reproof of Jacob was, which was not right as a patriarch. On his deathbed, we see that he revealed his feelings for this incident and his final prophecy about Simeon and Levi. It was, cursed be their anger so fierce and their fury so cruel. This episode is of unrestrained passion, treachery, and massacre at Shechem shows how close Jacob came in failure in maintaining the separation, in separating or keeping the covenant line separate. Apparently, he was willing to accept Hamor's proposal and become one people with the Canaanites, which was actually wrong, which was against the covenant made by God to them. It took the tragedy of Shechem to save him from drifting into this kind of unholy relationship or partnership, and to open his ears to the divine call and return to Bethel. This incident also shows weakness in Jacob's family life. Probably he was too busy raising sheep and breeding the capital to give attention to his children. He was more busy pitching tents more close to Shechem than exposing his sons to the influence of the life, and his daughters to the dangers of these Canaanite people. He seems to have lost control over his sons and failed to give warning and protection to his daughter. So he actually failed to do the right things. He could fail to nurture the children in the right way. He forgot to, he missed putting the right values in the children. He was so busy in business. He was so busy in making these material things achievable that he actually forgot his responsibility as a father, as a patriarch, as a covenant holder, to pass it on, the pass on the values of this covenant to his children and to protect his daughter. So he failed as a father, as a patriarch over there. But this issue goes back to the childhood, to his childhood, okay, where Simeon and Levi had seen the examples of deception, the problem of polygamy, family antagonism. All this had affected and influenced them in their childhood. Jacob and Esau saw it in their childhood because of favoritism. And we see now that because of polygamy and because of so many conflicts in the family, right from the childhood, Simeon, Levi, and the other brothers have been a victim to this kind of family issues and this kind of, unbalanced, imbalanced, improper psychological growing up of a child. Okay, so they did not have a proper nurturing childhood, but they were influenced by the character traits of their mothers and their father and their uncle and all the schemes and the plots and everything that was taking place over there, and they were the witness to all that, and they thought this is how we are supposed to. What we do as parents affects our children, it influences them. What we do with each other as elders influences our children, and they see and turn out to be the same way as we don't want them to be in that way. What we do influences them. So it's very important that we be careful of what we do in front of our children, how we behave, how we live, what kind of life do we follow in front of our children. It's very important because it impacts their minds. So anger and violence should be controlled in childhood. If not, they master the man. So when they become big, you cannot stop it. Right in the childhood, you have to stop it. Otherwise, it will master the children. The next thing that we see here, consecration of the family. God's voice called them back to Bethel. So God spoke to Jacob and he called them back to Bethel. He had long neglected his spiritual responsibilities and emphasis, which should have marked the heir of the covenant. Means this responsibility, this spiritual character should have been a part of the covenant holder, but it was missing in Jacob. Now he determined to return to the holy place and commit himself fully to God. Using his patriarchal authority, he commanded his family and servants to get rid of all the pagan images, of all the pagan earrings, and that they wore as charms, and everything that was pagan, and everything that was idolatrous, everything that was images of other gods and goddesses that was unholy. He asked them to remove everything and dig and bury them. And after that, it also actually included the teraphim that Rachel brought from Padan Aram, and every gods and goddesses, everything actually had to be removed and cleansed the camp and buried them under the ground. And they all, after burying these idols and everything, they had to wash themselves, take bath, and then put on fresh clothes. And this was a sign of external cleansing. So after burying all these charms and everything, they turned around and they moved to Bethel, that is God's house or God's appointed area for refuge. So Bethel is the house of God. He protected them from the Canaanite fury over there. At Bethel, Jacob built an altar to renew the dedication he made around 30 years before. He named this place as El Bethel. It seems that he was saying that he had returned to the God of Bethel and not just to the sacred site, the house of God. The duration of the stay is unknown. The death of Deborah, Rebecca's nurse, added a solemn association to this holy place. Here, God appeared to him again, assuring him that his new name, Israel, would be a constant reminder of his new character, his new relation with Jehovah, and his kingly walk with the divine way of life. Okay, so his life is going to be changed and this newness is going to come. Okay, in revealing himself to Jacob, God used his title El Shaddai, God Almighty. God emphasizes that he was to be able to carry his promises and supply all the need of the covenant family. Jacob set up a stone pillar as a memorial and not only poured oil now, but he also poured some drink offerings. He renewed the name of the site and taught his family to call it as Bethel and not as Luz, its original name. Okay, this was the same place where he had met God earlier, Bethel, in the same place where he saw the stairs. Okay, so he in the same place he is again meeting God, and he now that time he poured oil, just oil, and made those vows. Now he did not only pour oil, but he also worshipped God and poured out drink offering also. And he renewed the name of that place once again and told that this is the place. This is called Bethel. This is where I saw, this the staircase of God from heaven to earth. So this is not called Luz. This will be called Bethel. This Luz was its original name, but now it will be called Bethel. Okay, so this is all for this class, and the presentations or from this onwards, there are presentations from the class. So this ends actually the life of Jacob, and so there will be a presentation of the rest of the part of the chapter, and then there will be presentations on the life of Joseph. So we'll be watching those presentations also. Thank you, all of you, and I hope you all have gained a lot from studying from the lives of our patriarchs, and we will also learn more from the life of Joseph. So keep watching these videos and learning from them, keep reading the Bible, and keep learning from his word. Stay blessed.